100% in alignment with the wind. It's pushing directly towards the Palisades.
Fear and concern is growing tonight as flames light up the Los Angeles hillsides after what the National Weather Service calls
the most destructive fires in Southern California history left 24 people dead.
More than 12,000 homes and structures destroyed.
They have to clear every single one of these structures before they can allow people to move back in here.
LA County Sheriff's Department is one of the largest local law enforcement agencies in the U.S., but these days the department is facing what the sheriff calls a staffing crisis.
There's concern the shortage of deputies is leading to longer response times. In a 7 on Your Side investigation, reporter Kevin Ozebek is here now with what the department is doing about it. Kevin.
Yeah, so Mark and Ellen, let's just start off with the numbers right here. Right now, there are nearly 1,500 LA County deputy positions that are not filled. And when you take that and combine it with all the deputies who are out for reasons like medical leave, paternity time, or military duty, 23% of deputy positions are not available.
I'm going to start with this question for Alex. So, Alex, Aaron received an email from the City of Malibu a few days ago, and they requested, now, from what I understand, there's no RFP on the Malibu City website, by the way. I was told that yesterday. So they are just privately reaching out to security companies to get a private bid for patrolling fire areas, right? From the Palisades fire, correct, Aaron?
Yeah, that's correct.
Alex, I mean, what are your thoughts on that when the City of Malibu is paying millions of dollars to the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department?
Well, this is echoes of what Lancaster did, just a little less formal. But Lancaster actually went ahead and hired their own police department to supplement the Lancaster Sheriff's Station because of the sheer lack of personnel. And they're also suing the County of LA for about $10 million for overcharging them for services they paid for that wasn't delivered by Luna's administration. So this is a continuation of that thing we're seeing. And it all goes back to the current sheriff's sheer inability and incompetence in hiring and retaining sufficient personnel to be able to provide security for places like Malibu. When we have a natural disaster, when we have a large containment area and places that are evacuated, we have to provide for the security of the place and to prevent looting, for example. And that apparently is beyond his ability.
So, Aaron, why don't you chime in about your experiences with trying to get your clients the protection they needed during the Palisades fire? It was a mess. I know that for a fact. I was involved in that.
Yeah, we had a big problem with not only CHP, but LAPD and National Guard. Generally, the Sheriff's Department was, because we're used to working with them, but we got guys from other areas that weren't familiar with us. So it pretty much was a pile of crap.
Alex, can you chime in on that one? Because I don't understand why there's just so much miscommunication between the agencies.
Well, that boils down to leadership or lack thereof. I mean, if you have a clear guidelines from your leadership about what the troops on the ground should expect, and you communicate that, they should be able to interact successfully with private vendors and with all the different agencies in this multi-agency coordinated effort. But when you're coordinating a clusterfuck, well, that's kind of what comes out of it.
Okay. Wait.
We were even getting passes from LASD, and other agencies weren't honoring them. So, I mean, it is clusterfuck is the absolute word.
Okay, so let's expand on that, shall we? For the first time ever, I'm not the one spewing the F-bombs, so I'm known for that. Anyway, why don't we talk about, Alex, your experience with emergency operations and what transpired under your watch and has now greatly affected our ability during emergencies now.
Well, I can go back to 2007 when I was a sergeant at the Advanced Officer Training Unit, and I was basically assigned to teach Incident Command System, which is emergency management for the department's lieutenants, captains, commanders, chiefs, all the ranks, lieutenant and above. And that was no small undertaking. This stemmed from the Homeland Security Presidential Directives, I believe 5 and 8, going all the way back to 2005. This is from the Bush Jr. administration, and this is the fallout from 9/11. And in other words, basically everyone had to get their act together in emergency management and kind of to standardize how we approach emergencies have incident action plans and all the how do you pay for these things, everything from the federal level, state, county, city, tribal, all of that. So I delivered that, and then who would have known, fast forward, a decade and a half, and I'd be the one in the hot seat now having to do what I was teaching. So kind of an interesting take. But with that, when we had the start of the pandemic, and then we had the civil unrest in 2020, or the riots, or what are the woke crowd likes to call it, the uprising. I call it the summer of love. That during that summer we had I think around May 1st, around there, we just went to hell, and then everybody started rioting behind the George Floyd tragedy up in Minneapolis. And we had about 11 different places where there were mass protests. It devolved into looting and arson here and there. So being the mutual aid coordinator for the entire county, I took it serious. So I said, well, we're not going to become Minneapolis or Seattle or Portland. So let's get the troops on the ground. Let's get them out there empowered to do what they need to do to take care of business, which is basically, in a metaphorical sense, kick ass, take names. And they did exactly that. We helped LAPD in the Fairfax district, saved that from getting destroyed. We helped the Beverly Hills PD, work side by side with them, so the Rodeo Drive wasn't trashed. We blocked an effort to have the Citadel burned down and trashed because the anarchists were out there, Antifa. Oh, they were in droves everywhere trying to foment this anarchy. Santa Monica, we showed up to help Santa Monica, but they were too woke and wise, and they decided that let the promenade burn because, we don't want to upset anybody. So we pulled up stakes, went to Long Beach, and that was actively being looted, and we stopped the looting in Long Beach. Couldn't find the chief of police in Long Beach for some strange reason.
It was Chief Robert Luna.
He was hiding in the bunker, yes. And he sent his civilian buddy or somebody from Long Beach PD up in a helicopter to basically tell him what was happening on the ground because he couldn't poke his head out of the bunker to see for himself. And that same person today is one of the closest advisors of Bunker Bob Luna. Scary.
Oh.
Yes.
Now talk about what happened, how they took away your power at the emergency operations.
In April of 2020, the board decided, well, we just want to get rid of the sheriff as a director of emergency operations. And we want to appoint the chief executive officer, the CEO, basically a bean counter with no experience in emergency management. We'll have that person because it's more appropriate. And of course, along comes a riot. I mean, it was easy sell during the pandemic because it was health related. However, you still had to have the ability to understand the implications of what you were doing, which of course, Barbara Ferrer and the Board of Supervisors never understood. And that was a disaster of itself. But when the riots came along, and at least I didn't have to ask somebody else, hey, I'm going to do this because that was my authority. So I acted on my authority and I took care of business during the riots, and it worked. We did not become, as I said, Seattle or Portland. And deputies were empowered to do their job. They had no restrictions other than use department policy, use sound judgment. And you know what? No one died. Throughout LA, nobody died. And there was no major injuries. And there was arrests, mass arrests. I think about 800 or 900 people got arrested at one point by LAPD. And that was about it. So comparison to 1992 when I was a young deputy, holy shit. We want to talk about a world of difference. There, 58 people killed, billions of dollars in economic damage. And to this day, there's business, there's empty lots that used to be thriving businesses. So lessons learned, and we applied them in 2020, and it worked.
Okay, so what would have been different this fire that you could have helped security companies like IPS if you were the head of either emergency operations? What would you have done differently in this fire that could have helped IPS and other security companies service their clients better?
First, I'd show up. Rule number one, you got to be there. All right. I would show up at whatever the command center is going to be, and I want to know from my own eyes, okay, what is the situation on the ground? What are contingency plans? Fire, what are you doing? And if we need to do mass evacuations, what are the trigger events that's going to cause that? And then it falls on me to make the mass evacuations happen. That never happened. It became a cluster of basically ad hoc, evacuate as you go because your house is on fire.
Aaron, I'm sorry to interrupt. Aaron, what do you think that could have been done better that you didn't see this fire that could have helped you help LASD?
Well, during Alex's administration, we had a very good relationship with them, and we had been, their eyes and ears for them. We certainly weren't trying to act in an officious capacity. I mean, we're basically servants of our clients. However, we do come from a background and emulate law enforcement, obviously, to a degree. So, if you're a tried, true, and individual trusted organization, then you can be the eyes and ears for that agency and help them in any way that they can, because obviously the government is going to be overwhelmed even when you have a squared away sheriff in place. And, we operate in Portland and Seattle, and I saw the devastation that occurred there when you just let things go to shit. And so I know that I absolutely appreciated what Alex did when he was sheriff of LA County.
So, Alex, some more of what should have happened?
Because part of the issue in emergency management, you have to, they call it size up the dog. You have to understand the size of the problem you're facing. And going into it, you do, because Luna has destroyed the department, there's a massive staffing crisis. You do not have the personnel to basically man emergency response teams, mobile field forces, create a perimeter around containment zones, have checkpoints, all these things, you don't have it. So very honestly, you're going to have to enlist the support of both the National Guard and private security companies who have many clients, especially in these high-end areas like in the Palisades. That is a given that you have to incorporate them in part of the planning process. Not only, they're probably in the evacuation part as it's unfolding, they're not going to have the big involvement, but once the fire goes through, now you have the issue of containing the whole area that got evacuated. Then you have to have patrols to prevent the looting, and you don't have the personnel to do that. So that's where private security, the National Guard, all these elements working together can resolve the whole thing to the best that we can. Obviously, there's a national disaster. There's a lot of bad shit that happened, but at least we don't make it any worse by having this continuation of chaos.
Agreed.
And under 837 PC, we can make citizens arrest, and law enforcement has the obligation to at least come to the scene and make a determination of whether or not it's a righteous arrest or cut them loose in the interest of justice. So, California does have some teeth that allows, the private sector to assist and help hold the fort down.
Very true.